Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
Attention podcast listener, we've got an exciting new podcast coming just for patrons of patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1 has begun exclusively for our $5 and up patrons on the Talking Simpsons Network. That's the first 10 episodes of Futurama coming to you once a week.
So just sign up for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and you'll get Talking Futurama Season 2 and all of our limited miniseries, including the entirety of Talking Futurama Season 1. That's 13 episodes.
That is patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Now please enjoy the rest of this podcast.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we throw big rocks at Batman. I'm your host, the mundane miscreant Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever who is here with me today.
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and you don't have to be crazy to host this show, but it helps.
Very true. And today's episode is the Batman the Animated Series episode, Almost Got Him.
He was getting closer. And? I threw a rock at him. It was a big rock.
So part of our 2020 plan is to return to cartoons we've already covered once on What a Cartoon, and we're starting where we started the entire series with Batman the Animated Series. The first episode of What a Cartoon is all about Heart of Ice, the Mr. Freeze episode, and this is a much more fun and light episode than that one, but still very good.
Yeah, one of the things about covering Heart of Ice, which was very fitting because it was one of the first episodes, I believe first aired, is that...
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, actually.
And I think it is arguably the best episode of the entire series. But what it didn't let us do was cover the entire Rogues gallery. In fact, like, Mr. Freeze appears in fewer episodes than basically any other Rogue because and he doesn't work like the other Rogues because he is just a tragic dude, you know?
He's not about theft, really. He's about revenge.
This is much more about, and this is also like one of the later episodes in the first production run, so it's very like lived in, and the creators know the characters so well by this point.
You've had 2 months of regular weekday episodes and probably some weekend ones too, so you know all of the versions or all of their versions of these characters.
Yeah, and this is like they're having so much fun with the presentation of the show. They're like, we've done so many normal episodes. Let's do basically an anthology episode of the show. And also, like, they're really feeling lived in with the continuity and Gotham. And this is like, I looked it up, 46th episode produced of the original 65.
Wow.
Yeah. So deep into the run. It aired 35th in November. Can you imagine? They worked for years on this Batman show, and they're like, well, we finally have 65 episodes. Let's just air them uninterrupted order for 65 weekdays in a row.
I mean, every animated series of that time did that, but especially here, it feels like a waste.
It's so
just because
wasteful.
they work so hard and it's still so good.
I mean, yes, in all of them, it was wasteful, even with like
even
the
bonkers.
Yes, I was going to say even with the worst Disney cartoon, but yes, that's what, same difference. Or with Ghostbusters, they're like, yeah, it's kids shit. We had to get 65 episodes made to show it, so now we're going to show it.
Now surround these with toy and video game commercials. Hurry.
And I mean, I honestly, sometimes when we do these Batman ones, I'm like, could me and Bob just stop doing What a Cartoon and just make this the Batman show?
I actually had the same thought when I got to the end of this. I'm like, you know what? There's only like a few ones I would consider bad, but not bad in the sense that like a bad, again, bonkers is bad. Just like subpar for Batman, maybe. But I, to go back 2 years ago, I rewatched all of these about a decade ago through the Netflix discs. So these are all still pretty fresh in my memory. And going back through those, I'm like, there's only a few ones that are kind of iffy, as Maud Flanders would say.
Yeah, a little iffy. I think the one with like the Oliver Twist kids in the sewer, I remember that one being kind of a crummy one.
It's not super great.
Everyone
but
makes fun of the tiger one of like the cat people, but it's like,
it's got really good animation in that one.
Yeah. I am tempted to just do, it's only 100 episodes of Batman, and then that's 2 years, and then we do 2 years of Superman straight into Justice League. That's like 4 years of that. That's the next 7-8 years of our podcast right there.
Just throwing it out there. I don't know if anyone cares, but perhaps a future miniseries could be us curating 10 episodes of the series we haven't covered yet.
Boy, I really like that idea. Show up to the polls on the Patreon for our next miniseries thing, which I guess will probably go up in March, I think, that poll. So all the more reason to sign up at the $5 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And this one was really fresh in my mind because I had watched it with Nina a little over a year ago when we were just pals being pals and not dating. We were hanging out, and her roommate just got the new at the time Blu-rays. And I was like, oh, let's watch these. And the ones we put on were Joker's Favor, one of my favorites, and this one.
Yeah, that's
two very good standout episodes.
They're truly standouts. Yeah, I was going to talk about that Blu-ray collection. It's I got it right over here.
Pretty.
It's the HD remaster. Like I'm fearful when you hear about HD remaster of a thing you saw as a kid. Often it is about like cleaning it up too much and also like rewriting things. We talked about on Disney Plus. There are some bad examples of some HD remasterings on there, but this is like perfect.
It's gorgeous.
Oh my God, I put this Blu-ray in on my 50-inch TV, which is 4K-ish. And it looks so good. And what's great is, too, I think it was Warner, like, this Blu-ray set has come out in between the first time we did Batman as well. But this Blu-ray set, I think, shows that Warner is, like, future-proofing. They're like, oh, we're going to put this on every streaming app for the next 800 years. So
let's get it out on Blu-ray.
Good. Yeah. I mean, folks who don't want to get the Blu-ray set, it's gonna be this. It is this version of it on DC Universe, and I would assume it would be the same files they use for HBO Max in 2-3 months.
I bought the episode on Amazon, and it seemed to be very high quality. I don't know if it's quite as high quality as the Blu-ray, but it felt very, very high quality.
I think it's at least streaming from the same file source as they put on those Blu-rays. So yeah, it is totally worth it. And I guess yes, in these ones we're not going to do the lengthy history of the creation of the show like we did in the first one, but the short version is, in the shadow of the Tim Burton films, Warner made an adaptation of Batman that would be much more mature and noir-y, but still be a show that sells toys to kids. And they really pulled it off perfectly.
And even though it's not a Steven Spielberg Presents show, they were still working in that line of programming alongside things like Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and Tasmania and all that stuff. So they got away with so much, and they got so much money to make this. It's gorgeous.
Most of the staff came straight from Tiny Toons to this show, including like Tiny Toons really laid the groundwork. We talk a bit about this in our Tiny Toons What a Cartoon Movie, that it laid the foundation for all of the things that would come after it. Like, it created the relationships with overseas studios, and it trained the writers and directors who would go on to work on all of the other Warner stuff. That era entirely begins with Gene McCurdy's employment to run Warner Animation and start with Tiny Toons. And it was her call to make the Batman series with Bruce Timm, Eric Radomski, and Paul Dini. And this is quite an episode because it is written by Paul Dini and directed by Eric Radomski, two of the top dudes.
Two of the maybe three Godfathers. The other one is Bruce Timm, right?
Yeah, and on the commentary, Bruce Timm is funny. He's just like, I'm just going to sit back and watch because you guys really just did this one a lot without me. I have a lot of things to say about that commentary, but I'll get to them in time.
I'm not going to apologize for repeating myself from almost 2 years ago, but this is probably something I said before, in that I love film noir because this show show trained me into how cool it was. So especially this episode, even more than the last episode, it is so noir-y. Like it takes place in this impressionistic film noir like poker dimension where there's like no walls, no floor, just like a table floating in space. It's so cool.
Yeah.
The way that the entire opening scene is just played on their hands for like 2 minutes. That could be in a movie from like 1942.
You are so right. Yeah. And it's this amazing restraint and confidence that this team has after they, have figured everything out. They've done it all by the 42nd episode. So they know what they're doing here. Yeah. I did want to talk a little bit about Dini and Radomski's. I cover them somewhat, but let me just say that like Paul Dini is, I think looking back on it, the most important writer of Batman stories for the last 30 years. Starting from 1990 to now, I think he's the most important writer, like easily at least the most influential.
That is correct. And if you want to know what he looked like in like 1989, he is Dr. Gene Splicer on like 2 episodes of Animaniacs, and he's like a boss in a few of the old games too. So there's a Paul Dini caricature in the old Tiny Toons games.
I heard a few years ago he lost a lot of weight.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's an unflattering caricature of Paul Dini, I'll say that much.
It always was, yeah. And I mean, he's also fanboy on Freakazoid.
Yeah, that's true.
But Paul Dini was a graduate from Emerson who, in 1979, wrote his first cartoon script working for Filmation on stuff that he is very quick to say truly awful stuff. Like He-Man was the best stuff he worked on.
Was he on like
Filmation.
Rocket Robin Hood or any of that crap?
Yeah. He was on some things I was like, I have never heard of this because in our childhoods, nobody bothered to pay for the syndication rights to them. They were that bad.
Oh.
And he then traded up from Filmation to Marvel Productions, where he worked on Ewoks, which is extra funny because he would then write Star Wars stuff like Star Wars The Clone Wars 20 years later after writing Ewoks. His Ewoks episodes are one of the few that has the Empire show up.
Interesting. I've never seen the Ewoks cartoon, and I just watched Return of the Jedi recently. Those things don't talk. Do they talk in the cartoon?
They do talk,
Okay.
yes. It's basically the Smurfs. It's
Got
Lucas
it.
saying, I can make Smurfs with Ewoks. I could do that. But that's why when Dini's written episodes actually have the Empire show up, it's one of the few where it actually feels like it takes place in the Star Wars universe.
There's some sort of threat happening.
Yeah, I mean, you can see Lucas thought those Ewoks were going to be his meal ticket after Return of the Jedi. But he worked at Marvel Productions on Ewoks. Also, he did some Transformers and G.I. Joe work. And then Jean McCurdy, when he was taking all the talent she could, and that included Paul Dini to be one of the lead writers on Tiny Toons, where he and a bunch of other Bat nerds wrote Bat Duck episodes and shoved in every Batman reference they possibly could into Tiny Toons.
I have to assume he's behind one of the best episodes, Return of Bat Duck.
Yes.
That is
that's
such
his
a good
written
episode.
Yeah.
And it's also gorgeous.
I think that could be the best animated. So, How I Spent My Vacation is the best animated Tiny Toons thing, period. I think the best animated regular episode is Return of Bat Duck.
It was meant to kick off the Plucky Duck show. That was the one new episode that show offered.
Yeah, Fox was like, you can just put together clips for the rest of it, right? Just rerun them.
Yeah. Great theme song.
He was the dominant writer on the show, the story editor on Batman the Animated Series, wrote many scripts on it, informed takes on many characters, and created many characters like the Mr. Freeze people love. That's his Mr. Freeze. The Poison Ivy people care about, his Poison Ivy. Harley Quinn, his co-creation. And really, basically, I'd say he's the 60% ownership of Harley to Bruce Timm's like 40%.
And Harley Quinn, Never Hotter Than Ever. She is the star of Jay and Silent Bob Return or whatever, and also
yeah.
Yoga Hosers. So
when you were talking about Harley Quinn, I was like, yes, that's.
I
that's
feel
right.
like
you mean Harley Quinn Smith,
Kevin
the daughter
Smith.
of
I
Kevin
love
Smith,
you,
yeah.
but don't name your daughter after jerk off bait. I swear.
One of my favorite bits in I of course saw Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
It's coming. It's actually coming back. It's going to be playing in Oakland soon.
Oh, you should see it. You should see it.
I don't
know. Look, you know what you're getting, Bob. It's
true.
But Kevin Smith plays Kevin Smith in this film as well as Silent Bob. And there's lines where he has Harley Quinn Smith say, "I hate this Kevin Smith guy. He shoves his daughter into every movie." It's like, see, it's funny if she can say it. But anyway, also Harley Quinn is bigger than ever thanks to her getting her own movie starring Margot Robbie in a few weeks. I think it comes out in theaters. After Batman the Animated Series, he was a creative force on most of the DC animated universe up to the end of Justice League. But he worked on a ton of other things and a lot of other Warner shows. I think he even was showrunner or story editor on the Duck Dodgers show, which is not so bad.
I've heard lots of good things about it. I was a little too out of watching, regular cartoons at the time, so I didn't really see a lot of it.
Kevin Smith's on that too. Kevin Smith and Dini are pretty good bros.
Huh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Dini has a writing credit on that episode of Clerks we did, and he voiced George Lucas in that episode.
Oh, you're right. And also, Kevin Smith, I believe, still has a Batman podcast called Fat Man on Batman. Is that what it is?
Yes, yeah.
He's got to change that name now.
There's jokes about that in the reboot movie too. In 2005, Paul Dini also married his own Zatanna, actress and magician Misty Lee, and they're happily married since then. And he switched allegiances though from DC to Marvel. He has been working on a lot of Marvel stuff, including he was the story editor for the Ultimate Spider-Man series, wrapped up a few years ago, which you could watch all of on Disney Plus if you felt like it. It seems like a fine show. I watched a couple episodes.
Was he part of Superman, that series?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I just remember the Freakazoid joke, ask Paul Dini.
Yes, yeah. No, he was one of the top guys on Superman, yeah. And he also wrote some fantastic comics out there, too. His run on Detective Comics, where everything was a single-issue story. I think I've said this before on podcasts, but if you want a comic book that feels like the animated series, but is set in real DC continuity, read his Detective Comics. They are great.
I think you wrote a few issues of the animated series comic.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's where a lot of the artists and writers on it got to do things that Fox wouldn't approve. And so there is an amazing amount of comics done by them, including some comics done by the director of this episode, Eric Radomski, who has worked with Dini a ton up into this day, even he does. He's a co-creator who mainly defined the backgrounds of the show and the overall look of it. He only directed 2 other episodes in the original 65 season, and that was If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich?
Oh, so good.
And the other Clayface episode in the original run, which is called Mudslide. So he was mainly art directing and leading the backgrounds. This is a real special one that he's the director on it. He was actually, his credits almost none before Tiny Toons. He was relatively new to animation when he got hired on Tiny Toons. So being such a high-level producer of Batman on his second series is a real rise to fame for Radomski. And since then, unlike the other guys who kept working on DC stuff, after Freakazoid, Radomski, and he only worked on the first season of Freakazoid, Radomski left and worked on HBO's Spawn. He was the head director on that show.
I think Radomski probably thought he was going to be working on an action series with Freakazoid, which is probably why he jumped ship in season 2.
I can see that breaking his heart. He's like, I signed on. He only directed 2 segments, including the E.T. one that we did as an episode.
That's right.
After that, Radomski's like, I'm out of here. I want to do a HBO Sex and Blood show like this one.
With those stunning Todd McFarlane intros, which check him out there on YouTube. He should not be in front of a camera. I'm sorry, dude.
I'm a creator of Spawn. I could watch Todd McFarlane talk about comics every single day of my life. I love it.
I want to hear about all his famous baseballs.
I have a Todd McFarlane baseball right behind you, right there.
I totally forgot about that.
It's mainly a Stan Lee signed baseball that my husband gifted me, but you get a Todd McFarlane signature along with the Stan Lee signature. But yes, Radomski then in the late 2000s moved over to Marvel's animation, which I think he is doing. I've bagged on Marvel animation before, but I wholly think it is just Marvel not giving it the budget it deserves. I think artistically Radomski is leading it to the best of his ability, but they just don't. They don't have money. But he's been working on it since the last 11 years. He's including being executive producer on the upcoming Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends reboot cartoon, which based on the teaser art I saw, looks like they're Funko Pops, and I do not like the art design on it when I first see it. Yeah, no, but
that's worse than the original series.
I'm withholding judgment. Judgment. It's just a preview image. You can't hurt me. But so yes, that's a little bit about Dini and Radomski. I did also want to say another positive thing about doing this episode as opposed to Heart of Ice is that this lets you absorb the acting talents of the entire Rogues gallery in one episode, and it's really good.
They do explain why the Mad Hatter is absent.
Yeah.
Up front.
I mean,
Roddy
he's a
McDowell
loser.
not available.
Okay, this is getting into spoiler town for talking about the rest of the episode, but you can think that Batman caught Mad Hatter the night before of like, now I know there's an empty seat at the poker game and I can go in undercover.
To be honest, even though I just saw this a year ago, I forgot about the twist at the end. And it caught me by surprise again. I'm like, oh, right, yes. And then I was like, oh, the framing device is not lazy or anything. It's actually its own story.
It's incredibly clever. Paul Dini is one of the most like clever writers of superhero comics I've read in my years. Like, I think about how in Wizard magazine when I was growing up, they'd have like this back page editorial, like guest editorials, and Paul Dini did one that was all about storytelling and how he wishes, comics need to tell stories better. And think about this. And he said, very clever setup was he starts it by saying, I dated Michelle Pfeiffer once, but first let me tell you about storytelling. You need a hook to grab people. And he explains all this. And then when he gets to the last paragraph, he says, and about dating Michelle Pfeiffer, I did. In another universe. Anyway, goodbye. And he's like, it was also his tribute to how shitty endings could be in some stories where like, well, it was an imaginary story. Superman didn't actually marry Lois Lane.
And then Batman woke up.
Yes, yeah. They only did that one episode. They did 2 It Was All a Dream episodes. One where that was the entire point of it. The Mad Hatter had him in a dream world. And the other one where Batgirl was dreaming what would happen if she died and Gordon turned on Batman. But yes, this episode almost got him. The conceit of it is all the rogues are hanging out. They did all record together. Other than Adrienne Barbeau, she wasn't there that day.
They got the Barbeau bot. They brought her in.
But everybody else recorded together. And they say on the commentary, the principal cast dressed up because they were taking promotional photos that day of like, everybody's here.
Interesting. Yeah. And, we'll talk about Mark Hamill, who we heard on the Mask of the Phantasm, What a Cartoon Movie, but not in the episode that we did.
Yeah.
But man, we have been talking too much about Star Wars in the past month. We're over that now, and it's nice to hear him not as Luke Skywalker, because I'm like, no, I'm not a Star Wars guy. This is how I know him. This is my definitive Mark Hamill role.
I see both sides of Hamill. But Hamill is a ham, and he's great at that in Joker. Like Joker, he finds so much nuance to him, but also you can see that like when he's not directed by Andrea Romano, he loses a little of that edge too. But yeah, I mean, Mark Hamill, no introduction really needed. He was Luke Skywalker. He'll always be Luke Skywalker. He can't escape his destiny.
Is he still just the Joker forever?
No, he kind of quietly retired from the role, but he comes back for some projects occasionally.
Did he retire, or did they price him out of it?
I think it really was him saying like, I don't want to spend all my time with this. I'm in my 60s. Because he was being Joker in every video game, in every cartoon, but in things like Brave and the Bold, he's not the Joker. That was a clear choice they made of like, Mark Hamill's Joker is not our Joker. We want to find our own. And there have been many Batman direct-to-video movies too where they're like, nah, Mark Hamill's not the Joker in this. It's one of them is John DiMaggio. It's very strange.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but they go all around with the Joker being voiced by other people, but Hamill was still like, when they make the Arkham games, it was still Hamill, other than Arkham Origins. But Arkham Knight, the final Rocksteady Arkham game, at least for now, so slams the door shut on Joker that I think that Hamill was clear of like, I want to retire on this one.
Okay.
I'm done with it.
Apparently he was either 40 or 41 during this recording. So
wow. And yeah, on that only 40. He's still older than me. But yeah, we talked about it before, but Hamill is a comic nerd, and he wanted to be a voice on this show because he heard that as a comic dork that they were going to do a good Batman cartoon, which had never been done before. He always wanted to be involved, and to land the role of the Joker is hitting the jackpot on that role.
And the original choice of Tim Curry, who recorded a few, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a good choice too. I think you can hear some of that audio.
No, it's never.
Oh,
been
really? I thought recently it came out.
I haven't found it anywhere.
Okay.
I think they've still they need to release it. They should. I mean, mean, and Romano even said like she thought Tim Curry did a fine job, but she thinks that the producers had heard it too many times and fell out of love with it.
That happens on shows.
And so, that's Hamill. We talked a ton about Kevin Conroy in the last podcast, but he rules. The only update is that I didn't realize he had come out of the closet in a 2016 interview.
You told me that, earlier, like a few weeks ago. I'm like, whoa, geez, really? Wow.
I triple checked this information because I did not want to like spread lies about a person. But in a New York Times profile of him, they just stated like he did some play in the 80s that was about a gay character. And they said Kevin Conroy, himself gay.
Oh,
blah,
okay.
blah. So that was his quiet coming out thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that was crazy. I also like, for me, I was like, I was sure I'd have known he was gay before this. So I was disappointed I missed the news in 2016.
Gaydar was malfunctioning.
Well,
Get it serviced.
2016 was a crazy year for all of us.
That's true.
But let's talk about the rest of the principal cast in this episode of The Rogues. So let's start alphabetically with Adrienne Barbeau. She played Catwoman in all of the DCAU. After being a dancer/singer on Broadway, got her big break being cast in the B. Arthur vehicle Maude, which we know B. Arthur as the Golden Girls star, but she was already the star of the very popular series Maude in the 70s.
Which was a spin-off?
It was a spin-off of All in the Family.
That's what I thought.
In All in the Family, Archie Bunker, his sister-in-law was a limousine liberal type who was the left-wing opposite of Archie, and they would argue all the time on things. And so they made the show Maude as the vehicle for it, starring B. Arthur, with Bill Macy, who that's why William H. Macy is William H. Macy, because Bill Macy has the SAG name on Bill Macy.
Bill Macy recently died, so William H. Macy can take it over now.
Well, he's got other worries right now.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Lots of prison visits for him in the future.
But Adrienne Barbeau was her daughter on that show for like 7 years, the entire series. And she also was a bit of a 70s sex symbol with her. She had a sexy poster that sold many. It took many boys into manhood, I would think. In the 70s. Also in the 70s, she married director John Carpenter and was set in several of his classic films, including The Fog and Escape from New York. As she approached her 50s in the early 90s, she was doing a lot more television work, including getting cast in voice acting roles like this one. And I mean, she's a great voice actress as well, and the perfect sex symbol to play Selena Kyle.
She's a great Catwoman.
And she has so much like chemistry with Kevin Conroy. Like they're really good playing off of each other. And still works to this day. She was in the Broadway revival of Pippin. Also had a cameo in the new Swamp Thing series. As we all know, she was in the Swamp Thing film in the 80s.
I forgot that existed.
And
the new Swamp Thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got canceled like
Where
by the
was
time
it?
the second episode, DC Universe, of
Oh,
course.
God.
The famous television streaming service. And also she did a voice in Fallout 76, another success.
Oh, boy.
Man, she's the kiss of death.
Could have fooled me.
Now let's talk about Aaron Kincaid real quick, the voice of Killer Croc. This is basically his most famous role, I would say. He kind of, from the 50s until the 80s, he was just this like supporting actor who was in some bikini movies of the 60s, like The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, and like had guest roles on Patty Duke and Lassie.
Wow, so he's probably no longer with us.
Oh, no. He died at the age of 70 in 2011.
Oh, wow.
Actually, looking at his resume, he reminds me a lot of Rick Dalton, the Leonardo DiCaprio character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. One of these guys who almost made it, but then just started appearing randomly on a bunch of shows.
Playing Crocodile Men.
Well, yeah, in the 80s, as he aged out of appearing in live action stuff, he really just took on a bunch of voice acting roles. He did a lot of random additional voices on Marvel productions or Filmation or Deke Crap. Like he was Sky Lynx in Transformers. If you're a Transformers fan, that's you may know him. That's the spaceship Transformers Sky Lynx. But then he landed this role, easily his biggest. He also did the voice of Nerditor in that episode of Freakazoid too.
Oh, wow, okay.
And yes, left us in 2011. Now let's move on to Night Court.
One of the best sax solos ever played.
And that's Richard Mall as Two-Face, who we talked about him a little bit in that Mighty Max episode.
First voice role for him?
I think so.
It feels like Batman was the first time these people found voice acting, and then they stayed with it for a while. Like Roddy McDowell and Mark Hamill and people like that. I think they're like, oh, voice acting is a thing I could do.
Well, the 80s was all about non-union actors who could play 5 different roles. Like you hire Dallas Butler and he's half your Smurfs. That's how you do. It's how you do.
Just pitch him around a lot. Pitch him up, pitch him down.
So that's why, like Warner, and especially under Andrea Romano, they really changed up their casting style and going for voices that you didn't just hear everywhere. Because voices like Frank Welker are great. He's an incredible professional. But you get used to hearing it and it just sounds like, oh, this is a cartoon. I'm watching a cartoon. Like you read acting on a different level. So by casting great voices who are mainly known for live action roles, like Richard Mall, it has a very different flavor to your show. I had read that apparently Mall, they wanted a Brando type voice for Two-Face.
Oh.
But they loved his growl so much, like they just rewrote the character.
Interesting. Yeah. I love his performance here.
And yes, Bull from Night Court. The
lovable oaf.
The 6'8", huggable oaf too. He became such a cartoon by like season 3 of that show.
It's why I watched the show. I didn't get any of the sex jokes, but I did love to see Bull. I would say more oafs on television, more lovable oafs.
I like when they wrote him as just like, well, he's the unstoppable force. Like they'd like write him to have Superman level strength in some jokes of the show.
And also you find out in the finale he's an alien.
That's right.
He's taken back to his home planet like Poochie.
It was so weird for me watching syndicated Night Court because I thought Roz was always there. So then and also that Marky Post was always there. So the early episodes, those ones felt illegitimate to me as a Night Court viewer.
We saw so many bailiffs live and die.
Oh, R.I.P. Selma.
R.I.P. Harry Anderson.
Oh yeah, damn. All right, it's too much.
Bull is still alive. Richard Mall will not die.
When I see what acting he does these days, his credits are mostly just direct-to-video horror junk. Like, I don't know, maybe the movies are good, but it's just...
He's a huge man. That's where he belongs in horror.
He's a freak, scaring people in horror. I mean, for him, it must be what he wants to do. I would think it's probably not as syndicated as it used to be, but I would think the Night Court checks the residuals are still rolling in.
I hope so. I know Mighty Max checks are not. They never came. They never showed up.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Diane Pershing, the voice of Poison Ivy. Basically her only major role in voice acting.
Interesting.
Yeah, she had small bit parts in like stuff in the 70s and 80s, but she's one of those actresses who you're like, I guess, you move to LA, you don't really hit it big, or you don't become the next superstar, but you get gigs like this. Her other biggest credits on IMDb are writing credits on Love Boat and What's Happening Now, the sequel show to What's Happening.
Huh, interesting. Well, I'm hearing all these cast members and thinking about it, and Tiny Toons, that the cast there was like, who are the cartoon voice people? Let's get them in. For this, it feels like it was the opposite intent. Like, they weren't exactly like stunt casting or star casting. They were like, let's get non-traditional voice actors in here, people that don't normally do voice acting. The show will look different and it'll also sound different.
And for the part of Poison Ivy that they'd written for her to be this, film noir femme fatale, she really plays it well. Mm-hmm. She's great at it. And
so many babes in the series.
Looking at Diane's IMDb and her personal webpage, which is very like nice and mom. I like it. It's a very...
You signed the guest book?
Sweet. She seems to be quietly retired, but she still sings and performs on stage here and there. Let's talk about Arlene Sorkin, the voice of Harley Quinn. A friend of Paul Dini's in the 1980s LA scene. She was regularly appearing on the soap opera Days of Our Lives. In one sequence, famously, she puts on clown makeup and performs a kind of clown routine that stuck with Paul Dini, seeing her in this Harlequin getup, that when it comes time to write Joker's favor and give him a henchman that has to say lines and be more than just the usual just thugs that hang around guys, he remembers his good buddy, writes the scene for Arlene, for her character, like he imagined her voice the entire time, and cast her in the part of Harley Quinn.
I will say that I knew her the most before this from America's Funniest People. She was the co-host with Dave Coulier. And also, she played Eek the Cat's very large girlfriend. Annabelle, I think her name was. So, yeah.
Really?
Yes, that's right. And I will say that I'm a straight male, and I never got the sexiness of Harley Quinn. I never understood that element of her. Like, I don't know if there's something wrong with me. I think Poison Ivy is hot, Catwoman's hot. Maybe it's just the clown thing that bothers me. But I love Harley Quinn as a character, but I never was like, oh yeah, boner time for me.
I mean, you don't want to have like a subservient henchwoman who murders people for you?
Maybe it's just their codependent relationship I don't like.
Oh, it's a dark codependent relationship. But
your sexual fantasies with Harley Quinn end with makeup all over you, clown makeup all over you. Disgusting.
Well, I mean, Poison Ivy's going to kill you. Like,
true,
so.
But what a way to go.
There are folks who like to see, from what I've seen on the internet, there are folks who like classic look of Harley and that gets their motor revved up, but others like the Daddy's Little Monster Harley that we see these days.
That's I mean, I love this version of Harley, and she is drawn to be a sexy character. That jailbait version of her, that what's-her-face plays Margot Robbie, not a fan. Distasteful. Yeah.
Well, maybe, hey, the Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie, maybe that'll change your mind, Bob, when you see that. I'm sure you'll see that film.
Oh, yeah. I'm in line right now.
But Harley Quinn, that would be her role for like the next 2 decades. She'd voice her in basically everything because the role was for her. And the character turned out to be so popular thanks to her performance, Paul Dini primarily writing for it, and Bruce Timm primarily overseeing the visuals of it, that by the end of the century, she transitioned into being a regular DC Comics character. One of their most popular, even. And Arlene Sorkin did the voice up until the second Arkham Asylum game, because those games were written by Paul Dini as well. That's why, though they don't have a visual look of Batman the Animated Series, they have very much the feel of it because Dini wrote it. But I think my imagination is that she's like, I am approaching 60, recording video games sucks, I'm gonna leave this to somebody younger.
Yeah, I think it was the video game angle that probably made her quit, because those are the hardest roles to do as a voice actor. They mess your throat up the most.
Yeah. Okay, grunt again.
Yeah.
No, a different grunt now.
It almost killed Maurice LaMarche. It almost ended his career when he was doing like a Yosemite Sam voice for a video game. He had to like take time off. He had to go on hiatus to recover.
And also, like, video games are notorious for underpaying voice talent. Like, it's why Arkham Origins is a good game, but it is the B game of the series, and part of that is they paid for the cheaper voice actors who do regular video game work, not the famous people. If you can't get Kevin Conroy in your game, it's because you're cheap.
That's true.
Like, he will be Batman wherever you want.
He loves being Batman. And watching this again, I have not watched a series in like 2 years for the last episode we did on this, and it made me want to play those games again. In fact, I haven't played the last 2. I've never played Origins or Night, but I own them because I'm crazy. I buy everything on Steam.
I would start with Origins, and actually, you should have played it last Christmas because it's a Christmas video game.
I always want to play it around Christmas, but I always forget to install it.
We're also very busy at Christmas time.
That's
pretty much
true.
every Christmas.
I don't have time to play a game from 2013.
So yeah, Arlene Sorkin pretty much seemingly retired now. She is married to the Frasier executive producer, showrunner Christopher Lloyd.
Come now.
not the Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future, but
a far richer Christopher Lloyd, I'm guessing.
If you watch some old Frasiers, listen to those caller voices, because occasionally they're Arlene Sorkin as well. And last actor I want to talk about is Paul Williams. I love Paul Williams. He's, some of the first times I loved music as a kid were when songs were sung by the Muppets or by Sesame Street. And as I grew up, I found out he wrote a lot of those songs.
Talk about the Penguin.
Yes, the Penguin.
I didn't even know this for some reason.
Oh, yeah, it's Paul Williams.
Wow.
Primarily known as a singer-songwriter, but he's acted in a lot of stuff. And I mean, just his honeyed voice is so... It feels like the perfect Penguin for me, which is so funny that they cast him at the same time Danny DeVito is famously playing the Penguin in a very different range. Not a worse or better range, but let's just say different.
Yeah, I forgot this is Paul Williams. And so, like, in the Batman movie, he's essentially just like a crazy mutant, right?
Yeah.
And it struck me as, like, interesting when I was watching the series again, like, oh no, Penguin is just a regular criminal who happens to look like a penguin. And he doesn't go to Arkham when he's captured. He goes to regular killer ass jail.
He's not crazy.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, which I think definitely speaks to bullied children, is the episode where he's like, no, I'm turning straight. I'm being a good guy now. And he thinks he's being accepted into high society, but he's just being made fun of by the popular people. And that turns him evil once again. I really like that episode. The Penguin I think that's probably the strongest Penguin only episode. Like the other key Penguin episodes I think of are like Blind as a Bat, where it's really just about Batman losing his sight, not facing the Penguin. And you see the limitations of Penguin, I think, in this episode because he's just a taunting voice as Batman gets attacked by birds.
There's only so many bird-based crimes.
In the reboot season on Kids WB, they found the right thing to do with Penguin, which is he's a guy who owns a nightclub and who says, oh, I'm not evil.
That's right, yeah. Yep.
That was the much smarter way to take the character. But yes, Paul Williams, singer-songwriter. If you're a Muppet fan, you know so many of his songs. Rainbow Connection. Every song in the Muppet movie, he wrote that. And also every song in Muppet Christmas Carol, if you love that, he wrote all of those too. And he also wrote all the songs in Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Like his songs about Christmas do feel like Christmas to me.
Yeah, I do know those Muppet songs very well.
Also, if you're a soft boy dweeb like me who loves corny 70s songs, he wrote It's Just an Old-Fashioned Love Song. Wrote that one. He wrote the multiple songs for the Carpenters, including like We've Only Just Begun to Live.
How about Why Do Birds Suddenly Appear?
No, that was Burt Becker.
Damn it.
And he also wrote, we just talked about it, Love Boat, the theme. He wrote
exciting and new.
Yep. He wrote a lot of TV show themes. As for acting, he did make some appearances. The 70s were really his decade because he had a relative supporting role in the Smokey and the Bandit films. He appeared in those.
Wow, you're right.
He also was an ape in Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
No makeup needed.
And the villain of the cult classic Phantom of the Paradise.
Still need to see it.
It's a lot of fun.
I've heard it's great.
And the last Paul Williams thing I will say is he wrote the song from Emmett Otter, When the River Meets the Sea, which is about death, that I want played at my funeral. It is one of my favorite songs.
I'll make the arrangements now, Henry.
Please remember this. Tell my husband.
Oh, you have some real plans here. Well, I die first, naturally.
Maybe I just have it on my mind because at Christmas, my mom was like, let's watch the Jim Henson Memorial. I'm like, please no. But
on Christmas?
during the Christmas break, yes.
My mom loves Emmett Otter, though.
Yeah. My mom too. It's a mom favorite. I mean, it's a movie about being a mom. You
and
realize as you grow
yeah.
up. Yeah, it's about a mom. You see it from the mom's perspective as you get older. But
before we move on
Paul
to
Williams is Penguin. Yes.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. But before we move on to the episode, I do want to mention this episode was adapted in two different formats of two different things. So there is one sort of storybook and cassette tape adaptation of this when they were still doing that for kids. When you get like a little storybook and a tape that you would play while you read the story.
I had so many of those books on. Well, it's not really a book on tape. Yeah.
Not really. I don't know how'd you describe it, but it's an adaptation of this story, and it is all of the actors being recorded in a separate recording. Mm-hmm. So these are different performances, different direction, and a slightly different adaptation of this story. But that's all on YouTube. You can listen to it on YouTube.
It's fun to listen along to hear all the principal actors. So Poison Ivy's not in it. I think to make it fit, I would think the storybook has to be a certain length, and so they're like, well, what do we cut? The girl.
Yeah, it's like a little golden book, so it's not that big.
And also, I Hit Him With a Rock is not in it. It's one of the weirdest choices.
Great. Too violent, I guess, maybe, for the storybook.
Maybe.
You never know.
They change a few lines in it, and it's also interesting to hear, like, they don't sound directed by Andrea Romano to me. I could be wrong, but I mean, I do have to give them huge credit for like they got the real voices from the show. Like they actually paid for that in what should have been just a cheapo cash-in book.
Yeah, so there's a not very super great version of the recording online. But you can still listen to it. It's still fine, but you can just, they recorded this separately in like 1991, and here's a different performance of all of these lines. And also, there is a card game adaptation of Almost Got Him. Now, I love board games and I love card games, but what I hate more than anything, because they're not for someone like me who is very anxious, is werewolf-style games. And that is a game based on lying to people.
Yeah.
And the last time I played one, I just felt terrible. and awful and awkward. I think the next time I'm asked to play one, I'm just going to pretend I have diarrhea.
Yeah.
Be like, sorry guys, just major diarrhea. I got to get out of here.
I hate, they're also like Mafia, I think is another name for this game. It's the games where it's like you lie to each other. It's just can you tell if your friend is lying to you is the point of the game.
And the last time I played this one was in the worst possible scenario. It was at the end of a very long work day, and I was getting to know a huge new group of people who all already knew each other, and they said, let's play Werewolf, and I was like, oh my God, I can't say no. I'm just getting to know them, and I just felt bad. I felt terrible.
It's a terrible game for wallflowers, I think.
Yeah.
It always fills me with dread having to play it. I hate being the liar, and I also hate the feeling of being lied to afterwards, which is the whole point of those games, but they drive me crazy. Hey, if you like them out there, have fun.
If you like it looks cool. Like one of you is Batman in disguise, and you each choose your roles. You have different goals in the game, but it is one of those lie to your friends games, and I'm not a fan. But lots of people love those. I'm not one of them.
They replaced key parties. These lie to each other games.
Just have casual sex with your friends' wives. It's so much easier than lying.
Just a little HJ in the bedroom and move on. And on that note, why don't we take a break? And when we come back, let's talk about Almost Got 'Em.
Tomorrow on Batman, the meanest villains take on the greatest superhero.
The coin says you lose.
With the most incredible showdowns you'll ever see.
Now, prepare to meet your end.
You won't want to miss all the excitement.
We've got a real treat for you, kids.
Watch Batman, the animated series, tomorrow afternoon on Fox.
Welcome to the break, everybody, of Batman, the animated series episode Almost Got 'Em. It's me, Henry Gilbert, dealing you poker cards, and you can always trust I don't have an ace up my sleeve.
Hey, everybody, it's me, the Clown Prince of Podcasting, Bob Mackey.
And welcome to the break. Thanks so much for listening. This is such a fun episode to do where we can return to the world of Batman, the animated series, and we love doing it with you. Thanks to the support of our many subscribers to the Talking Simpsons Network on patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's right. If you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and sign up at the $5 level, you'll get every one of these podcasts 1 week ahead of time and ad-free. And you'll also have access to everything behind the $5 paywall. Things like exclusive miniseries like Talking Futurama, Talking Critic, Talk King of the Hill, and the recently wrapped Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1, and 2 new miniseries coming in 2020 just for $5 patrons. There's also 100+ bonus podcasts behind the paywall, things like interviews, end-of-season wrap-ups, deleted scene specials, and so much more. And Henry can tell everybody out there what is happening at the $10 level, extra long podcast every month that patrons vote on.
That's right. Our monthly What a Cartoon Movie podcast is only available in full for our $10 and up Patreon subscribers. At the end of each month on the What a Cartoon feed, you'll get to hear a lengthy preview of it. But if you want to hear us talk for over 4 hours about films like last month's The Iron Giant or this month's Animatrix, you can only do that if you support us at the $10 and up level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You'll get access to the entire back catalog of the What a Cartoon Movie franchise. That means movies like Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. We talk so much more Batman in there. You won't believe how much Batman we can talk about. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Kiki's Delivery Service, Akira, a Goofy movie, Tiny Toon Adventures, I Spent My Vacation, Nightmare Before Christmas, Toy Story. So many fun things that you can only hear if you're a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if this is your first time signing up for Patreon, it's so easy to do. And once you do, you're given a code. You have access to that code at all times. You drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And you can download our bonus podcast alongside our free podcast and whatever other podcasts you listen to. There's also a Patreon app that's really great and allows you to download our bonus content that way. But either way, it is so easy to listen to everything extra we're giving you on the Patreon at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
All right, now let's deal another hand and listen to more tales of Almost Got 'Em.
my extra special guest.
So, Almost Got Him came from an interesting premise just from Paul Dini talking about wanting to experiment with the show and saying, like, what if we did an episode where Batman seemingly never appears in it and he's just talked about by other people. Then also came from like, oh, let's do a thing about the fraternity of rogues. They say like, hey, let's all play cards together. What are we going to talk about? What do you think we're going to talk about? Like this.
Yeah.
There's a very informative commentary for this.
This could be a much lazier premise, just an excuse for like 4 short stories. And even then, I would still enjoy it. Like going into this, I totally forgot the twist. And it's like, well, yeah, there's 4 stories and then Batman shows up and it's over. But it's actually, even from the beginning, Henry, you're right. Like there's a reason the Mad Hatter isn't there.
Yeah.
And it all plays into the grander scheme that's happening throughout the framing device.
And same with like the way Killer Croc acts the whole episode. You're supposed to think if you're a regular viewer of it, you're like, Killer Croc's not this stupid. Like you're really making a lot of dumb jokes with Killer Croc. That way they get to have their cake and eat it too, because they get to do a bunch of like this guy's dumb jokes, and then the shock of like, no, Batman was playing him super dumb as part of his act. Like.
And all the things they're getting away with in this episode are great. Like I said originally in the first part, the maybe 2 minutes just playing on their hands. So just by how they're moving their hands and what their cards are and the little gags they get in using the hands, you could tell who all the characters are and like what their deal is, even if you've never met them before.
It shows how iconic the character designs are, that like just from the wrist up, you can tell who they are. One of my favorite bits in it, when they're revealing each person's hands, you know the Joker instantly. You know the Penguin's hands and Killer Croc's hands too. You first see a normal hand, and then the big blue hand comes in from the side of the frame.
I forgot about that reveal. So yeah, that is really cool. And again, something they're getting away with, where they trust the 10-year-old boys they're writing this for. Really, adults are watching it too at this point, but they trusted kids to be like, you will look at these hands for 2 minutes and you'll enjoy it. Also, there's an entire segment of this episode in black and white.
Yes.
Which is a good choice.
So long.
And it didn't need to be, because it's framed as like you're watching a television show from this weird like 40s-ish, 50s-ish time period the show takes place in, which the network would have been like, don't do that. The people will think their TVs are broken. Kids will think it's boring. Black and white sucks. They were allowed to do it. Also, all of the very real guns that appear in the final act.
Yeah, they break a lot of rules in this, and the guns especially.
Yes.
Yeah. And all the black and white. The precision of the hands moving when the cards are dealt. Like I think it's some of the best animation in the episode.
Yeah, the opening flourish with the Joker shuffling.
Oh God,
so nice. And this is not even Japanese animation. This is Korean animation.
Yeah.
So we can't fawn over our friends at TMS in this episode.
Well, I don't want to. It's a dangerous thing where just like, obviously the Japanese animate better than Koreans. Look at their skull shapes like that.
Geez.
I don't want to ever approach that kind of conversation, but it is. I think we get it from the way the anime industry works. That they usually treat it as, we are pawning off the in-between artworks or the lesser animation work to Korea, or Korea is usually gets the lower budgets or works with lower budgets than Japanese production houses do. Though that could also just be from like Japanese producers like TMS. They have a choice. do we animate anime for our native industry or do we animate overseas stuff? And you need to pay them, I think, a little more to get them to work on something overseas. Meanwhile, for Korea, at least in the 90s, there is not that same kind of native animation industry for shows in Korea that Japan can count on. So that's also why they're used more for overseas services. I did see in Dong Yang is the sole credit on this. A lot of their Batman and Warner work is co-credits with either TMS or Spectrum. They're actually, Dong Yang is the main animator with Spectrum on Mask of the Phantasm, and they are the only credited animation services on Batman and Robin Sub-Zero. But a lot of their times Dong Yang is credited on Harley and Ivy episode, but they'll even say on the commentary of like, well, we gave a bit of this to TMS, or TMS laid this out or animated this.
I guess you don't need to credit a lot of the overseas stuff. Just you get away with the one animation services by credit a lot of the time.
And TMS, also they had their own studio in Korea called Coco, which worked a lot with Dong Yang as well. So, but as far as I can tell, this is just a pure Dong Yang episode.
It's a very, very good looking episode. There are some bad looking episodes of this series, or ones that don't look nearly as good as, Dong Yang or TMS.
Let's dump on Kennedy Tunes and talk about that Christmas
Kennedy,
with the Joker.
Yeah, that's like the second episode on the Blu-ray set, right? It's like On Leather Wings and then Christmas with the Joker, I think. At least it was that way on the DVDs.
Yes, you are correct.
Oh, wow.
That's how early Kennedy, once they got that first one back, they're like, all right, no more Kennedy.
That was quite a rude awakening. Like On Leather Wings, gorgeous, amazing, so dark and just beautiful. Slam into Christmas with the Joker, which is a funny episode, but man, Kennedy sucks.
I also wanted to say the music on this is, Shirley Walker, not one of the credited composers on this. The music is by Stuart Balcombe, who only orchestrated 3 other episodes of the series and most of his credits are of orchestrator, not composer, but he worked on films like Triple X, Hudson Hawk, Shanghai Nights, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
It's very much in the style that is, it's sort of in a way, it's aping Danny Elfman, but it also does its own things. And you can hear a lot of the leitmotifs she wrote for characters, especially the Joker. You hear a late night version of his sort of theme later in this episode.
And I do like just the sound of playing poker, like
the
really
sleazy card slinging music.
But yeah, the episode begins with some card dealing.
I want a nice, clean game, gentlemen.
That'll be a first. So, I hear you know who nailed the Mad Hatter last week.
No kidding. He sure gets around for one guy.
Yeah, well, that's where you're wrong. I don't think it is one guy.
Huh?
Way I figure it, Gordon's got a bunch of them stashed someplace like a SWAT team. He wants you to think it's one guy, but...
You're always seeing double.
It's obvious our Cape friend suffered some crime-related trauma when he was younger. Perhaps an over-anxious mugger blew off a piece of his face.
Sure. He could be all gross and disgusting under that mask. No offense, Harv.
Just deal.
Well, you know what I think?
Not the robot theory again.
Well, he could be.
I also like how everything they're drinking, too, is descriptive of their characters. Like, the penguin is making, like, tea.
Fancy tea with a twist of lemon.
I'm sure they'd be drinking booze if this was made for adults. Each having like a different alcoholic drink to symbolize who they are.
Joker has a very colorful drink with him that I'm sure is alcohol-free if it aired on Fox.
Sparkling apple juice.
That's one of my favorite things on OKKO, that every time they have a thing that looks like champagne, an apple juice box is right next to them. He's drinking coffee with half and half in it, Two-Face is. I love all the you're always seeing double things. And oh God, the animation is he palms an ace out of his sleeve. God, so good. But deck shuffling to have all just the continuity of it, to have all 52 cards facing you and you see them and then they move back in. There's so much precision on display there.
All the very specific animations you need to do with hands, making them look consistently like hands and moving very, minutely. Just such well done animation.
And the writing on Two-Face is so good the whole episode of all, not just half and half, but also when he gets his hand, he's like 2 more cards. Like he taps down to be like, I'm taking 2 more cards, discarding these. Like, and later his card hand will be a pair of doubles. Like he'll have 2 aces and 2 twos.
Almost too clever, but I love it. I love it.
And also, when you know that Croc is Batman, what he is proffering, a robot being Batman, Batman had gone through that of a robot replacing him in Heart of Steel.
They're referencing a previous episode. That's awesome.
But they don't know, the rogues don't know that happened, so they're just like, enough of this, you stupid robot theory. I also just like how they all completely underestimate Croc, think he's stupid, and that's why it was the perfect guys for Batman to play. It's almost like Croc is the new guy who's like, I invited him to poker night, he's the new guy, everybody. But as they're enjoying their boys' club, we then introduce Poison Ivy doing the thing she loves to do, which is murdering the patriarchy and just smashing in. Now, it's time for Henry's over-analysis of authorial intent segment here.
Sure. She does order herbal tea.
Oh, no. Just the idea of this card game. Imagine you are working crazy hours on your animated show about Batman, and all your friends are just the people you work with on that show, and you are hanging out socially. What do you talk about? You talk about Batman all the time because your work never ends. That's who the rogues are. Like, the rogues can be talking about anything, but they're like, well, no, it's time to talk about Batman. We're hanging out. Let's talk about Batman.
I can see them channeling that and also talking about Batman's other adventures.
Yeah. So that's what I read into it now, of just like, oh, the rogues are workaholics who can't even relax when it's their hangout time. They're like, well, obviously we're going to tell stories about Batman. He's the most important person in all of our lives. But yes, let's hear the arrival of Poison Ivy.
Get me an herbal tea and deal me in.
Scram, lady. This is a private. Why, you little. Poison Ivy.
It's been a long time, Harvey. You're still looking halfway decent.
Half of me wants to strangle you.
And what does the other half want?
To hit you with a truck.
We used to date.
It's great.
I love that. These ridiculous cartoon characters of Joker and Penguin having the very realistic reaction of like,
They understand the the fraught X relationship.
Yeah.
And Batman does get his ass kicked as Croc, although he's faking it.
He lets it happen.
Yeah.
I also love in that whole exchange there, you will see Croc in the background getting another chair, like throwing a guy out of a chair and getting a new chair.
Right.
Yeah. But to talk about the continuity, that was them referring to the episode Pretty Poison, the 5th episode of the series, where it's Ivy's first episode and she's dating the normal district attorney, Harvey Dent, and poisons him.
And that what gives him the Two-Face then? Or
No, he gets a Two-Face in a 2-parter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's Harvey Dent independently, and then there's a Two-Face episode.
They actually really take their time in setting up Harvey because they realize the tragedy of Harvey is that Bruce knew him as a normal guy and he wants him to be better, but he can't be. And so episodes like Pretty Poison set up their friendship. There's a good joke at the end of it where after Batman's defeated Ivy and cured Harvey's poison, he says like, I just don't think she's the right girl for you, Harvey. But yeah, also I love the posing on the layout of that. Harvey says, part of me wants to strangle you. And you only see the good face side.
Yeah.
And then when he turns to reveal the evil face side, that's when he says, hit you with a truck.
It's such great staging. And again, this takes place in like the noir poker dimension where there are just silhouettes in the background, just like tables floating in the background. There's no defined like walls or ceilings or floors, just like a weird void they're all sitting in. That's like all that matters is the character. So you don't need like bottles in the background or doors or windows or anything like that. It's such great staging.
You just assume like we know they're playing cards. They're just lit. It's almost like it's like a play, a stage play. This whole thing.
I could see that.
Yeah, and actually the lack of detail in the backgrounds, that always kind of reminds me of the Mystery Science Theater brain that wouldn't die joke of like, oh, I'm in another dimension.
That was just the cheap insert shot of a guy's head, but I understand.
Yeah. In the next clip here where they're all saying like, I almost killed him, I almost snuffed him out. So many great just tight shots on the characters' faces which I do think is probably a standard definition conceit, because they're like, well, we need to be close on them. We can't zoom out too far, but it also just looks great.
And I think up front, the Joker lets you know he has a story to tell last. So you stay tuned. It's like, you like the Joker a lot, right? Well, he's got a story, so just stay there.
Yeah, and he's saving his for last. I also like the Joker fully inserts himself as like, I'm obviously the best rogue, and I definitely got the closest to killing him, but I'll let you guys tell your stupid story. And the episode story proves him right, of like, no, you are the best villain. You're always the best villain. You're the Joker. Of course, you're the best.
Save the best for last.
But yes, we start with ladies first.
What brings such a dainty dove to this dismal den?
Running from the law. And the Batman, too, of course.
Of course.
Likewise. You got it. Same here. You'd think one of us would have got him by now.
I've come the closest.
Are you kidding? I was the one who nearly...
Nobody's come closer to snuffing the Batman than me.
Get
out of my face.
The fact of the matter is, we each have an almost gotten Batman story. I know mine's the best, but let's hear yours anyway. I'd say ladies first, but since we don't have any, we'll start with you, Pam.
All right. This happened last Halloween. I had rigged hundreds of pumpkins to blow out poison ivy gas when they were lit.
There's a lot of action in the show. There's a lot of showing and not telling. And when I rewatched the entire series about a decade ago, I really noticed that, like, oh, Kevin Conroy does not say a whole lot as Batman. It's mostly like, and then, like, occasionally be like, it's over, Joker. And that's it.
Yeah, he's the strong silent type usually played. But Kevin Conroy makes it matter whenever he talks.
I mean, the last iteration of Batman that people saw on TV was like, now wait a minute, chum. This means this, and now we have to go down to the bank. It's just like an overly chatty Batman was the last Batman.
Well, because this Batman can actually do stuff and make actions.
Yeah. He's not standing around on a very tiny set.
Who can only walk. We walked by that set on the Fox lot.
Oh, you're
remember?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I do love in a classic 66 Batman seeing all the times that Adam West goes like, but wait, chum, you see, and he just does a slow little stroll around a table, and then he goes, that's precisely Robin. But that is not Kevin Conroy's Batman.
But that also feels like them getting away with things, because even in an action cartoon, it's like, no, have characters constantly screaming, explaining what's going on. This, they're selling a lot because the action is so well directed. They don't need to tell the kids, like, now Batman has to go here. Now he's got to go here.
Though I love when those little moments do come up in the animated series. I think of the one in the first Riddler episode where they say, like, the riddle is corn is high as an elephant's eye. And they actually, him and Robin do kind of have the Adam West Burt word exchange of like, corn is high as an elephant's eye. What is before your time, Robin?
That is a problem that needs to be talked out, though, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Also, hyper-analytical vision here. It is Croc who says, I almost got him. He's the one who starts this argument. Like, it's Croc who says it first. So I think that is Batman pushing them into saying this, because ultimately Batman is there to get the Joker to reveal his plan and why he has Catwoman.
I mean, it's so obvious, but I'm just realizing that now. This framing device is probably the best framing device for just the telling of stories.
And I only caught it hearing it in this right now of like, oh, it's Croc who starts the conversation of almost got him.
So Batman's just gritting his teeth, waiting for the Joker to tell his story.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so actually the Joker's taunting him even there. He's just like, I'm going to tell my last because it's best. So you're going to have to sit through 3 other stories, Batman. Not that the Joker knows this. Or maybe he does. I don't know. But this story here, I love that it's like a mini Halloween episode in the middle of the show.
That's true, yeah. And it's all pumpkin poison based, this plan.
According to the commentary, their original idea was that it was going to be Christmas trees and it would be Christmas based, but they changed their mind to Halloween. And I think, too, what I love about this being an anthology episode is that as the way people remember Batman episodes, it's kind of in fast forward. But this one is just like, this is just the third act action set piece of 4 different episodes of Batman.
That's true.
They just cut out all all the stuff of a problem being introduced and then Batman figuring out one of his rogues does it and then confronting them, just goes straight to the confrontation.
And there are never blue skies in this world, so I love this red sky in this scene. It's so cool.
Terrifying looking. Yeah, this is a spooky Halloween here. So there's 3 credited storyboarders on this episode. Andy Gaskill on the commentary, they credit him as the border of the Ivy sequence. He would go on to be art director and visual development director on a lot of stuff, including Lion King, Hercules, and Treasure Planet. So they were lucky to get him. And they also, he's currently just doing visual development for the upcoming SpongeBob film that comes out this year. So still at it, this Gaskell guy. Now, I will say on this commentary, Bruce Timm needs to chill out, like
Too
take
horny?
a cold shower.
Okay.
So
he's famously horny now, right? We know this.
Yeah, this was recorded, I think, 15 years ago.
Sounds right.
It was right after the release of the cleaned up version of Return of the Joker, because on the commentary he bemoans that it wasn't as violent as he wanted Return of the Joker to be. So he is really turned on, and that includes that begins in this sequence here. You may notice Ivy is not her normal Ivy design. Like her
I noticed the lack of shoes.
That's what he says. Like,
oh boy,
I remember.
Hot feet.
He says Andy Gaskill did this, and I remember it's him because he was the one who chose to have her be barefoot and meow. Like he is so excited to see Poison Ivy.
I mean, I'm not a foot guy, but that seemed like a sexual sort of intent with the barefoot Ivy.
And plus, she's not wearing her normal green leggings too. Like she's just wearing a dark green one-piece bathing suit that looks like a Barbara Stanwyck kind of bathing costume.
And there's there's a very sexy shot of her at some point in the sequence where she's just very slowly walking towards the camera when she sort of has Batman cornered.
Yes.
It's very, very sexy. I mean, they knew what they were doing with this character.
Yeah, I mean, they were pushing the envelope as far as they could go, but it's one thing to know that, and it's another to hear Bruce Timm go like, I like that. Like he's this close to saying daddy like.
We can only assume his T levels have dropped in the past 15 years.
Look, again, sometimes I'm too mean to Bruce Timm on these things. He's one of my favorite artists. He's such an important artist to the cartoons I love, but he's a little too horny on main, or it's just like, I don't know, draw porn then. It just
Did he draw one of those butts that's like a double butt?
He drew the double butt, yes, in the Batman, Robin, and Harley the Batman and Harley direct video movie. The less said about that, the better. But yes, Poison Ivy's plan has begun. Batman arrives in his Batmobile. I like that they established the Batmobile right there, that it pulls up, because it's how he defeats her too. And man, the show has such great explosions, like every pumpkin blowing up.
They're gorgeous.
And Batman gets poisoned. This also is the first time they establish that Poison Ivy cannot be poisoned and no gas works on her.
Oh, okay.
Which is true to the character to this day. They fully incorporated that into the Poison Ivy character. And yes, Batman falls down. He gets poisoned. Ivy actually could have gotten the coup de grace on him, but she's like, see you later, Batman, and just walks away. Like, the Joker is right to tell her she sucks because she blew it with Batman.
The one time could have snapped his neck.
But yes, Batman is given just enough time to tap on his utility belt to turn on the Batmobile and chase her down. The animation of her being chased is really great.
And just scrambling up a pole.
Mm-hmm. And she, as not violently as possible, lands in a bunch of pumpkins. So as we remember, the rules are she can't fall on her chest or her behind. So no woman is allowed to do that on the Fox standard. So she fell on her back, let's say.
That shot of her running towards the camera, being chased by the Batmobile, reminded me of, this is going to be my snooty little film noir comment, but the opening scene, opening titles of Kiss Me Deadly. It's the woman running down the street towards the camera down a road. That's what it reminded me of.
Wow, that I think is a good one to bring up. I bet you they did. I bet you it's a direct reference. I wouldn't be surprised. Batman gets one of his 80 different gas masks out of his car, and I just love too that he just shakes his head at her like, "Come on, you thought you'd beat me, Batman?" And I think she's gotten closer to killing him after this. But the rogues reflect on her lame story.
And that's how I almost got him.
with exploding pumpkins.
I'd like to hear you do better.
Oh, you will. But I'm saving the best for last.
Can't be better than mine. There was this time I had just robbed the Gotham Mint of $2 million in $2 bills. Lucky for me, I brought along the 2-ton gang. The coin says you lose, Batman. Tie him up. And just so you don't get any ideas...
It's so great to hear his growl isolated from the video. You can just hear the flaps in the back of his throat rattling around.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. I gotta say, I mean, I know they're Batman villains, but if they didn't theme their crimes, they'd be a lot more efficient.
That's their tragedy.
Yeah.
Like a regular guy is just like, I will rob a bank like that. I mean, Batman should always be watching the Second National Bank. If Harvey Dent is not in prison, then he's like, okay, anything with the number 2 in it, let's watch out.
We're not circulating $2 bills in Gotham anymore. I'm sorry. It's a liability.
That $2 million in $2 bills had to be the entirety of $2 bills that exist, I think.
In all of the country.
And I also do like Joker's review of Harley. Like there's almost, you can see this as like a TV pitch session as well, where one writer is pitching like, and Harley's plan is a bunch of, exploding pumpkins. And then another writer's like, exploding pumpkins.
Yeah.
Come on.
You know what? You're right. Your comment about this being the Batman writers talking to each other after work, it's just like, it could also be like a pitch meeting. Like, I wouldn't buy that. That's stupid.
And it's also funny, though, the Joker, who loves themed mayhem, is just like, exploding pumpkins. Come on.
I mean, his entire thing was like hosting a talk show.
Yes, yeah. It's also fitting the Two-Face's story goes second as well.
Oh, you know what? God damn it. It's too clever. The story's too clever.
And also it's great that it is the commercial break one. Like the stakes of it are high enough that you can take a break on like, we're going to kill you, Batman, after this commercial.
I think it's a little tiny bit of a cheat that something Batman does pays off after the act break in this one self-contained story.
That's true.
But
That's true.
mean, they had to put a commercial in somewhere.
Yeah, but I do like, as even in my first viewing as a 10-year-old, I loved that Two-Face was finally smart enough of like, you always get out of things with your utility belt. No more.
It's stolen twice in this episode, right?
No, Penguin comments on it. He says, and I bet you use your utility belt, right? But it doesn't get taken away from him. Even Joker leaves it on him for the electrocution scene. But it's also, this is a problem when you remove his utility belt, is that Batman's standard character design is with a utility belt on, and sometimes on a TV budget, you forget to not draw it on him. That actually happens a few times in this vignette.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, yeah. So continuity.
Not too many times, but speaking of continuity, Bob, you said the buzzword.
Oh no.
Let's talk about that giant penny and the history.
I know it's fan servicey as hell. I know that.
It is so fan servicey. So the Batcave is a favorite of comic book fans for the longest time, and there's many things in his Batcave that everybody remembers. Probably, there's the giant Joker playing card.
Yeah.
There's the robotic dinosaur. But number one has to be the giant penny.
I mean, in all those games, I think the penny is there too.
It has to be.
Yeah.
If it wasn't there, you'd be like, hey, Goober, where's the penny?
And this is the origin of how he got it.
So the original origin of that giant penny is first seen in the September 1947 comic book World's Finest, number 30, where Batman faces forgotten rogue member Penny Plunderer.
Oh boy.
A man who steals pennies.
Back when pennies had value, I guess.
47, you could get at least a steak and kidney pie with it. And so that was the Earth 2 origin of that penny, which means the Golden Age Batman. But then once they did Crisis on Infinite Earth, it basically, if you're a comic book fan, you know I'm skipping over a bunch of stuff, but please don't make me go so into it. But when they did Crisis on Infinite Earth in the mid-'80s, it basically rebooted the timeline. And so in 1987, that gave them the excuse in Batman 410 to have Two-Face be the person who created the giant penny, which that was came out 5 years before this episode aired, so I'm pretty sure that's why they did this story with Two-Face and the Giant Penny.
That's fairly recent then.
Now, in a 2008 comic book, that was the most recent mainline update to the origin of the Giant Penny. And they met in the middle of having it be a team up between Two-Face and Penny Plunderer facing
he came back.
Batman. Yes, they brought him back.
It should be just like Silver Dollar Plunderer or something. Bitcoin.
Well, so that's the problem, though, with this, that Two-Face shouldn't be flipping a penny. He flips a silver dollar. So it should be a giant silver dollar Batman's on. But I think they set it up perfectly that at the bank, there's a giant penny that's like being displayed. So Two-Face uses it because he's there. He didn't plan out like, oh, bring a penny, because that isn't thematically fitting for Two-Face.
And nobody knows what a silver dollar is. Those have not been in circulation for a long time, right?
No, I don't think. I mean, yeah, I think.
I'd see one occasionally, like in the 90s and 80s and stuff like that, maybe. I'm like, Grandma, what is this?
Like those predated the Kennedy dollars.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I've only seen, or those are half dollars.
Half dollars. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. This is coin history, by the way.
I had a little bucket of collected coins as a kid of like, wow, this is, I remember my very nerdy thought of, this one's from 1962. That's when Spider-Man first appeared. Though this does come from, this coin flipping thing does come from a classic Two-Face comic as well. February 1954's Batman number 81, which in that one, Batman and Robin are strapped to a giant silver dollar that is going to flip around. And Two-Face even says, like, I made it so it's going to flip you side down and definitely kill you. And the way he gets out of it in that comic is complete bullshit, where he just says, Robin, on our utility belts, we can reverse magnets, and then it'll change it so we fall on the other side. It's a bunch of bullshit.
But in this one, he says, if it falls on the other side, you break all your bones. So.
Which is, yeah.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And also, he takes away his utility belt. I feel, that could even be Dini commenting on the original comic of like, no utility belt bullshit this time. It's gone.
He would know the original comic.
He definitely would, yeah. So that is the history of Two-Face and giant coins. And yeah, Batman, when he takes away the utility belt, they do play it fair. Batman jumps on him very briefly, and you're like, that could be when he takes the coin.
I went back and there's no like grabby animation, but I think it's implied that's the time. But again, it's before the act break. I'll give them the cheat. It's fine. They had to put a commercial in, but it's just like, oh yeah, you have to remember after you watch your Cinnamon Toast Crunch commercial and your Mighty Max commercial that Batman did something.
And this sequence was boarded by Gary Graham, who still also works in the animation industry to this day, doing a ton of boarding, mostly on DreamWorks productions like How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, and Abominable, the Bigfoot movie that is not to be confused with Smallfoot or Missing Link.
Missing Link is, oh my God, there's three of them?
There are three Bigfoot movies.
Missing Link is the Golden Globe Award winner.
That's the Leica one, yes,
yeah.
the good one. And of course, Smallfoot stars Zendaya as Michi.
Oh, of course. Oh, that's what that came from.
Yeah.
Wow.
Abominable doesn't even have that. It's just not remembered.
Is that the Aardman one?
No, Abominable is the DreamWorks one.
Oh, God. Why did this happen?
I think Smallfoot is Sony. I think it is. Or it's
I think that was on the Warner Brothers poster.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
thing.
Yeah. Abominable. Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Whatever. Anyway,
we're not going to talk about these movies ever.
How can there be that many in a year period? How can there be all these different ones?
Feels like a mistake.
Movies.
I do want to see the Leica one. I do like Leica.
That got advertised all the wrong ways of just like, yeah, it's a silly Zach Galifianakis movie. He's the missing link. And now they're finally putting out trailers that are like, this is actually artistically driven and not a stupid kids thing. But anyway, enough about that shit. We come back for commercial break. Harvey has got Batman tied up. I like that they set up that this is not a silly 1950s Batman death trap, that it is like, well, we had to put it together. We got a forklift here and it's going to drop gold bars. on one side of a pendulum and you'll flip on the other. I mean, it still is a silly death trap, but it isn't like in the Adam West show where everything is like labeled as death trap machine or whatever.
There's some physics to it.
Yeah. I do like that Harvey's playing it unfair with his 50-50 chance. He's just like, well, yeah, you'll just be, one's death and one is crippling and you might live.
So if he is, if all of his bones are broken, does someone like collect him and take him to the hospital?
I
Is that part of the
just
deal?
leave him there to be found by somebody.
I guess.
I suppose so. But yeah, Batman is sent flying through the air, and it's, I mean, what a gutsy shot there of like on a flipping giant coin, Batman will free himself and jump off in one shot.
And the coin is like moving towards the camera too, so things are getting larger. Yeah, I wrote that down. I was like, that's an incredible shot for TV animation.
And I also love Maul's reaction, like, where's my coin? Oh no! Now, if he wasn't so hot-headed, he would have walked over to Batman and grabbed the coin out of his hand. But instead, he goes like, "Flip it now!" and he instead drops it. And that is one sharp coin because it cuts through that rope and Batman is freed. But again, not as stupid as, oh, I turned on my reverse magnetism, part of my utility belt.
But that coin does kill two of his henchmen, but I guess Batman didn't do it, so...
Yeah, the coin was launched by somebody else.
Yeah. Those men are crushed.
On the commentary, Bruce Timm also loves that. He's like, we really got away with something there. Those men are dead.
You don't hear them go, oh,
That's
afterwards.
true. That's true. They get off, the other ones who get lifted off by the forklift, they get off easy.
Yeah.
Batman doesn't even punch him.
Just some light forking.
As an adult, you notice how many times they have to avoid Batman punching a person, which he just should do. Yeah, they did it so well that you often didn't notice it. But yes, Batman then rides a forklift in a very funny image. I like that picture a lot. And he knocks Two-Face into a bunch of money, and then Batman even gets off a little bomb of like, here, I owe you $1, and throws him his silver dollar like, fuck you. And that's like one of the few words Batman has said up to this point in the episode.
That's true. I thought that was a quarter. Again, I forgot silver dollars existed. So I was like, all right, silver dollars.
Two-Face was created in the 40s, so there were silver dollars aplenty back then. That's why they had to, in The Dark Knight, just create the story of like, oh, I have a fake silver dollar I bought from a magic store or whatever. There'd be no reason he'd just have a natural silver dollar he'd then cut a face into. Oh, wait, actually, here's the 50-50 chance line. I really like it.
So what happened next? I thought as long as I had Batman at my mercy, he deserved a 50-50 chance. Here's the deal. The coin lands face down. You'll be squashed flat. It lands face up. It'll just break every bone in your body.
Every bone in your body. But once this story is over, we then get the line everybody remembers from this episode, but I don't think people remember how long the silence is, and also that Ivy says something in between his lines. But so don't adjust your podcast here. This silence is this long in this next clip.
Here, I owe you $1. And if it weren't for this blasted coin, I would have got him.
Gee, that's too bad, Harv. But I guess you'll always come in second. Anyone else want to go?
Me! There I was, holed up in this quarry. When Batman came nosing around, he was getting closer.
And?
I threw a rock at him.
So, Harvey, what became of the giant penny?
It was a big rock. They actually let him keep it.
It's funny, now that I know everyone in the background, they're just cops. I bet they're like, did Batman blow his cover? Even they're quiet.
That was too dumb.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah.
Even they clam up during that line, after that line.
I love the drawing of everyone's reactions to him. It was just like, really?
A nice pan across their like dumbfounded faces.
They let him keep it. And also the way Batman plays it as Croc going like, it was a big rock. And he like looks down sad and everything. Yeah, I just love it how the way Poison Ivy changes the subject. She's like, so
Anyway,
Harvey, what happened with that penny? And I like too, they make sure he has the line, of like, they let him keep it. To explain that is definitely the penny that's in the back.
Yeah, I wrote down fan service next to that line.
That's what I love. I want that fan service. Folks did on the wiki find in a previous episode when Croc was fighting Batman, he does throw a rock at him. So
it's true.
He actually could be basing it on that story.
When you fight him in Arkham, I think it just charges at you.
Yeah. He's from in the 90s after this show, and this actually happens in the show. Croc is used as the guy who's he gets beat up by the new guy to prove how strong the new guy is. Both in the cartoon episode of Bane and in Bane's first appearance, it starts with him beating the crap out of Killer Croc to prove how strong he is. They're like, oh, he's way stronger than Killer Croc. That's pretty much what happened. I do like in Arkham Asylum, Croc is he's 2 stories tall. He's a monster.
And he eats people too, I think.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you can't say that on kids' TV. He eats people. They probably had trouble saying he eats rats. Hey, what about those poor rats? Then we get to the Penguin story, which I do think is the weakest vignette. Not that it's bad, but I think if we're saying what's the best, I think it's the weakest.
It has one of the most ridiculous and funny Batman moves in which Batman stabs a bird with another bird.
That's pretty great.
I've got a bird that acts up from time to time. I never thought of threatening him with a smaller bird.
I will grab a hummingbird and stab you
in the ankle.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's bird violence, but it's also so ridiculous that it doesn't bother me.
As I think they are to be read as real hummingbirds, but in my first viewing as a kid, I thought they were robot hummingbirds.
Me too.
Because they don't have legs.
And they're just sort of, once they get wet, they're just sort of flopping on the ground. Oh, he deactivated the robots.
I still prefer to think of it as Penguin got robo hummingbirds, because that, though, I guess I do like that he pretends that he used the wrong umbrella, but he's like, no, that actually was the puff of smoke I was supposed to hit you with, because it's the bird nectar. The hummingbird nectar. Yeah.
I mean, hummingbirds have this crazy tongue that basically wraps up inside of their head and it comes out when they want to drink from the nectar. They don't bite you or anything. They'll just lick the nectar off of you.
So then he also wouldn't be stabbed by them to spread around poison.
Also, I'm pretty sure they just made these hummingbirds up.
It'd be pretty funny if Batman is just licked by hummingbirds. It feels kind of nice.
I get used to this. And the cassowary, that's a real animal.
Oh yeah, we talked about it in the regular show episode.
You're right. Yeah, and most famous for me playing Far Cry 3. I'm like, what is this? And then just kicks you once and you're dead. So. Cassowaries are actually that dangerous.
They're scary ass bird, man. They can cut through anything with those claws. So if Batman's gonna fight any bird, that's the cool one. But yeah, this Penguin story shows the limitations of writing Penguin, which is he is in no way a physical threat to Batman.
No, he has to taunt you from a loudspeaker, basically.
He's like, well, you're actually just fighting, and I don't even have thugs. I have birds. I have a collection of birds. Also, how many times has Batman had to fight people in the Gotham Zoo? It's probably been millions of times.
Shut it down.
But yes, the Penguin, at least, he may not be a physical threat, but he has a honey voice that you really get to hear a lot of in these clips.
Whose deal is it?
Mine. I find your middling machinations mildly diverting, but for sheer criminal genius, none surpasses my most recent ornithologically inspired entoilment.
Smaller words, please. You're losing Croc.
For weeks, I let rumors circulate through the underworld of my plan to steal a pair of priceless breeding condors from the Gotham Zoo. Sure enough, on the appointed night, guess who showed up?
And then the way he threatens Batman in this next clip, too.
Welcome, my ebon-winged adversary. You have taken the bait as I knew you would. Now prepare to meet your end within my aviary of doom.
Aviary of what?
Yeesh, Pengers. How corny can you get?
Fa!
Pengers.
Just because you mundane miscreants have no drama in your souls. Anyway, there he was in my big birdhouse.
God, Joker's really trashing all these themed crimes. That's the gimmick of all you guys.
No, again, it's a writer's room. He's like, Aviary of Doom, that's stupid.
Big birdhouse.
My big birdhouse. Like, and also he calls them like yeesh pengers, like pengers. But God, I love Paul Williams' voice so much.
Now that you told me it's him, it's like, yeah, of course. Like, who else sounds like that?
Yeah. If you're a Dexter's Laboratory fan, he wrote a great song for that show too, where he teams up with Dexter and he sings a song, "When my music meets your science, it's the."
I'm sure I didn't know who Paul Williams was when I first saw that.
He's just a nice voice to sing songs. I can listen to Paul Williams songs all day, and even hear him talk about hummingbirds and poison. I do like how he explains how the poison works and tells Batman, like, more than that, and well, I'd like to say it was nice knowing you. I like the challenge for the writers of Batman has to defeat these hummingbirds without harming innocent animals.
But he still does.
Well, for the hummingbirds, he only covers them in water and they just lightly fall down.
But getting your head jammed into another bird's leg.
Okay, that hummingbird's
very fragile.
Dead. You're right. Yes, that one is dead. Fine. Though also, I think about it now, more clever writing. The way Penguin describes how one won't kill you, it makes it clear that Batman's stab to the cassowary doesn't kill it.
Oh, you're right. Okay. That is, again, too clever. I love it.
It only chases it away. And I like the animation on it is already freaky. And the way they animate it, like slightly injured, of like, and they're like just hopping away. That's really great. And then Penguin covers his escape with an explosion, which now I think about it, probably killed every bird in there.
This bird's going to fly.
I wish I had the sound effect for Everybody Hates Birds, but
that's more of a Talking Simpsons thing.
That's true. Yeah. I also animation error when Batman throws his batarang. It's the sound effect of spinning, but it does not spin.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, the story ends with the only other bit I like in it is the Penguin going like, "Oh, I would pick the wrong umbrella," which is a lie. He knows it's the right umbrella, but he's pretending to be a dork.
He chose the correct nectar umbrella.
His umbrella nectar. Let me tell you a great scene in comics that I really love. One of my favorite Penguin scenes. It's when he guest stars in a Flash comic, and Flash villains are teaming up with him, and they're hanging out with him at one of his bird stupid places, and they're like, "Ugh, all these birds, what a dumb theme." And the other guy says, like, "Yeah, and why does he always walk around with umbrellas anyway?" And then bird shit lands on one of the guys, and the Penguin walks up to them with an umbrella. He's like, "Yeah, I bet you wish you had one of these," kind of expressions on his faces.
I will warn you, if I am mutated in any way, I will become a bird-based villain.
Okay. Do you have a name ready yet?
No. Working title, The Parrot.
Okay. It's got a... can't go with African Gray.
No.
Think of a different one.
That'd be problematic.
Yes, yeah, you can't go with that. We'll think of something.
Yes, workshopping this.
But yeah, the Joker's reaction to Penguin's story is so great because he is like, "All right, enough of you losers. Time for the main event here."
Still, I almost got him.
Not even close. You see, the thing you're forgetting is that there are all sorts of ways to get someone. Take my latest run-in with Batsy. It was just last night, as the entire country was tuning into its favorite talk show.
It's Late Night Gotham Live! And here's the man who puts a smile on your face whether you want it or not, the Joker!
So it's sort of like the big band Johnny Carson version of the Joker theme.
I love it.
Very cool.
I love every piece of it. I love that Harley, as Ed McMahon, even gives like the bow to Joker when he looks at her.
Yes. But then later when he sits down, he's more like David Letterman, where he does the throw the card behind him thing, but they explode.
I love
and
that.
they're playing cards, not like blue index cards.
On the commentary, they even say like, kids won't even know what this is anymore, this talk show host thing, which I still think they would. I think kids would get it.
I do like that Joker has a clip prepared for this.
Yes.
But again, this whole
he
thing.
pulls up a television.
Yeah, and like turns it on.
I've had this TV next to me the entire time. I bet you wondered why. Well,
I think he had to wait for the show to be rerun to tell a story. Okay, no, we can do it now. We can do it now. But yeah, this whole entire scene is black and white. Again, I think very, very daring for kids' TV at like 4 p.m. on November 12th, 1992, to be like, here's a black and white scene, kids.
And the way they set up to it, he's just like, well, I've got a story, and just his coming out to it, and also the way Harley puts it as, he puts a smile on your face whether you want it or not. That's so funny. And Joker's right. Penguin's not even close. The closest he got to killing him was like, well, I poisoned you, but then you almost instantly gave yourself an antidote, and then I ran away. What a great story of how you almost killed Batman. And it's really great, too, that Joker is telling a story of like, this happened last night. I'm telling you the story of last night. It reminds me of the Gotham Night Live, reminds me of the Jack Parr show clip we saw on Iron Giant when we did that movie. Yeah, and Harley is doing so much work, too. She's the band as well. She plays the drum roll for his monologue gag. There's something about Joker and talk shows. He's done a lot of stuff against talk show personalities in his time. In the Frank Miller comic, The Dark Knight Returns, he murders David Letterman and the entire cast, everyone in the audience,
too. You're right about that. It's a nice reveal. It's a kind of a fun reveal when you see, like, everybody there, like, the people working there are all as thugs and they're all armed. And then you see the final reveal of that is like, the guests are being held hostage.
I love the look on the guest's face where at least one of them is smiling like, everything's fine. And that, also speaking of him and talk shows, you'd know it from watching the trailers. So a David Letterman, Johnny Carson style talk show is very important to the recent Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix.
And thinking about that not great looking episode, Christmas with the Joker, he's basically doing a Christmas special on TV, right?
Yeah.
With the kidnapped mayor?
That's right.
Yeah,
yes,
so he loves being on TV.
Mark Hamill's Joker is he wants to be a television entertainer. It's not just about, it's also like he caught Batman the night before. He could have shot him in the face and been done with it, but he's like, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, people need to see this.
I have to do it on TV, and I can't even just electrocute him on TV. It's got to be to a laugh-o-meter. It has to be connected to it. But that's also a great commercial break that he reveals like, and what's on the Joker show tonight? I've got Batman. And then it goes to commercial break. I believe in this next clip.
Good evening, folks. I'm the Joker. Living proof that you don't have to be crazy to host this show, but it helps. We've got a real treat for you, kids. I ran into my first guest last night while making a withdrawal from the bank. You know him as the Dark Knight, but we prefer to think of him as history. Here he is, the one and only Batman.
It's quite an elaborate prop, too. I think he stayed up all night working on that.
I figure he did that whole plan for like months. He's like, all right, the last trick is getting Batman. Man, so much fun on that sequence here. It's his stand-up routine. There's just no time for a full monologue. But
no, the fun bit of him getting stuck in the curtain and then sticking his face out very menacingly.
Joaquin Phoenix basically just does that in the movie.
Rip off.
I also like that the Joker, his final bow is with his ass to the audience, too.
They even give a little trumpet sound for that, too, like in the soundtrack.
And just hearing that, ba-da-da-ba-ba-ba-da, great music. Great. And then they even do a Carson-style, bumper of more to come.
Yeah, with so smiling teeth.
So good. And the laugh-o-meter is such a great idea. I love that he could just throw a switch and electrocute him, but he'd rather make people laugh and also give them the Joker toxin, which I have to think that still killed the whole audience, or at the very least they needed immediate medical attention.
Yes, they're all in therapy right now.
But I also like his attempt at small talk of saying so how's Robin? All right, well, anyway. But yes, the laugh-o-meter needs its own explanation.
Moving right along. Kids, we've got an item here no home should be without. The laughter-activated electric chair. Yes, sir, the merest titter or guffaw starts the chair's generator revving up towards maximum zappage. Harley?
Ha, ha, ha.
real demonstration. We're pumping our studio audience full of my patented laughing gas. These yahoos laugh at anything now, even the phone book.
Marthin Abbott, 555-8976. Gerald Adams, 555-9011.
I like how they take the expression like, oh, he's so funny he could read out of the phone book, or his voice is so great I pay to hear him read out of the phone book. They take that and make it into a death trap.
You're right, man. That is clever. That is, and the flat delivery of it by Harley. She's so great. Like her ha ha ha. God, so good. And yeah, the staging of her in front of the curtain with the spotlight on her as she reads it. It's great. I'm glad you don't see the audience laugh, but I think that makes it more mysterious too. I like it. You see that the audience is being held at gunpoint by its hired goons, but
it's a lot of faces to animate laughing, I think.
Also on the commentary, they are very surprised they got away with zapping Batman for as long as they do.
A lot of torture in this act.
He's electrocuted on screen for a long time. They're also shocked that when Batman got cut by the cassowary, they're like, oh, that was blood. We got to do blood.
I didn't even think twice about that, but yeah, blood on TV.
It's shocking. And this was late into season 1 where it seemed like they got more notes of can't break glass, can't do X, Y, and Z. There's also an interesting bit in the commentary when they're electrocuting Batman where Bruce Timm says, hey, Joker likes electrocution. We had that in Return of the Joker. At least we did at one time.
Oh.
He's moping about how it got all cut up in the...
Was anything put back into that movie? I watched
the PG-13 cut came out.
That's the one I watched for the first time.
That's the better version.
Yeah.
The PG version isn't bad. It's good, but I think at the time Warner was like, oh, Batman can't go this far. In fact, in Return of the Joker, there's also a gag about him barbecuing things while torturing someone, as he does with a hot dog over Batman here. And then it's pretty cool of Catwoman to save Batman. Catwoman has made so many appearances on the show, and by this point, she's fully a good guy now.
Yeah, her showing up in this is always a surprise to me. Oh yeah, she's in this too.
I mean, also, this is so packed with rogues, and when almost every episode is either one rogue or at most two of them team up. This one that already gave you 4 of them, and then Catwoman shows up. It is a real surprise. Wow, Catwoman is also in this episode.
I'm just kind of tracking the plot of the framing device. So he captures Mad Hatter. He finds out about the card game. He's not only using the card game to find out what happened to Catwoman, he's also using the card game to capture everyone who got away from him in those stories, right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting, they overthought this in a good way, I think.
And he needed to get to it that night. He's like, all cops get together at the card game right now because that's where they're going to be, and we need to find out where Catwoman is. He's going to kill her if we don't catch him. But yes, I also really love how she kicks the Joker into the wall of his stuff, and it all shatters around him. It's really great. And yes, the Joker seemingly failed as well.
Yes, if not for that infatuated feline. Oh, but that's the best part. Once the chair went up, I was out of there toot sweet. Miss Kitty still wanted to play cat and mouse, never dreaming I still had an ace up my sleeve. And by golly, speaking of aces, looky here.
I can't believe his luck.
Oh, darn. Let me see those cards. Now, no sore losers.
And he literally had an ace up his sleeve earlier.
It just hit me when he said that. I was like, oh, that's, again, so clever. Paul Dini is a really clever writer. And the twist that Selena has been captured this whole time. Also, a quick comment on that giant gun Harley uses with the
boxing glove?
boxing glove in it. It became a regular of her weapons in DC as well. Like it's right along with the giant mallet she uses, and it is inspired from Eric Radomski traveling to Japan in the early 90s and coming back with this giant revolver gun that shot out streamers. And he said he only came with like 4 capsules for it, so they never shot it off. And then Paul Dini thought it was so cool. He's like, if I wrote Harley Quinn to have this, maybe the toy companies will make a real one in America and then I can buy it. But you can't make gun toys for kids if you're Batman anyway.
Did they even make a Harley Quinn toy back in the day? Like, it's a girl, so I'm wondering.
They made a couple in the waves. There definitely was like a Catwoman toy and Poison Ivy. So I would believe Harley got her own toy. But yeah, that giant gun has been with her for a long time. And it's funny, they got away with like, they couldn't punch Catwoman in the back of the head, but they can't have a giant boxing glove hit her in the back of the head.
Yeah, I guess a person can't punch her, but a gun can punch her.
I love all the money Joker takes too. He's like, I got this sack right here. Shove, 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 all my money. But yes, now it's time for quite the reveal. The key thing of this whole episode, and this whole sequence is boarded by Glenn Murakami, one of the rising stars of the Batman animated series, who'd go on to tons of success. The funniest bit is on the commentary, they say he almost never boarded. He was more of a character design guy because Tim says when they were going to hire him, they gave him a board test and he did so poorly that Bruce Timm had to say like, well, he's still too good of an artist not to hire, but he won't be doing boards. But they say that like, sometimes they just had to take whatever border was available. They didn't have as clean of a system. So they're like, Glenn, can you board this bit? And it was Glenn's idea to have the completely impossible silhouette reveal of Batman.
It's impossible, but I love it. It's just so stylish. I love also how the lighting, like, so the light is swinging right over him. And as his face is shaded, you see like the Batman eye. So like telling you what's happening. I mean, it's implausible to begin with that he is this well disguised and they don't see through it. So you have to get beyond that to buy this story.
As we know, Batman is the best at Kung Fu. He's the best at acting. He's the best at ventriloquism. He's the best scientist, the best driver. Batman's just the best at everything. It's just how it goes.
I guess when you're in a universe where characters are just simple line drawings, it's easy to disguise yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
Also,
he'd only need a little lifts in his feet to be as tall as Croc. But yes, here is the reveal.
Hey, I don't get it. You just knocked out Catwoman and left her?
Oh, come on, Crockers. Didn't I say there's more than one way to get someone? Even as I speak, Catwoman is being trussed up at the Pussykins Pet Food Factory. First thing tomorrow, I'm sending a lovely case of cat food to Batman.
I don't think so.
Was it something I said? Well, an imposter in our midst.
Risking everything for your kitty, Batman?
You're not getting out of this one. Maybe.
Oh, so cool.
So many guns.
But I'm not bad with traps myself.
I gotta say, I hate guns. Guns suck. No guns for anybody. But the depiction of guns can be very cool. And the scene of everyone drawing their very realistic in that universe gun is super amazing and cool. And just an amazing moment. Yeah.
Fictional guns are very cool.
But it's not like, I mean, there are deco guns. They're not like realistic pistols, but they are still like, that's a pistol, that's a rifle, a mantle. They're not like laser guns or bazookas or whatever.
And just the threat is right there of like, if you shoot Batman, you will all be shot to death right here. here.
I mean, this feels like a big thing they're getting away with, like a bunch of guns, like cocking.
So many cocks
Yeah,
of guns.
so many cocks.
And also, talk about trusting the audience, too. They have a prime shot of Harvey Bullock and Commissioner Gordon, but they don't say, thanks, Commissioner, or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
they don't even have lines, which also, though, they probably have. I mean, this had to be the biggest voice acting budget the show ever did in the first season. Like,
Yeah, I never
it's all
thought
their stars.
I never thought of that. It's like, oh, I know who those characters are, but they trust you so much with this episode to be like, okay, yeah, those are the two I know.
And I just love Batman, who has been doing an act the whole time. When he leaves the room, he kind of does like a bow, like, I'm not so bad with it myself. And he outstretches his arms.
He's a bit of a ham, that Batman.
And other than I owe you $1, these are the only words Batman says in this episode.
Yeah, again, Batman, like Kevin Conroy talks so much as Bruce Wayne, but rarely as Batman. Batman's a very strong and silent character.
And even in this one, there's no scene where, say, in the Batcave, Batman says to Alfred, like, well, Alfred, you see, I had to do this, or this is the plan here. I mean, that's also really trusting the audience.
Yeah. With Batman, it's just like his lines are always like, it's over, or no more.
Or stuff like
This
that,
ends
yeah.
now. Yeah, that's all Batman ever says, really.
Yeah, in this one, he's like, maybe.
Yeah.
Snap. That's it. But yes, the Joker is defeated too, and now Batman has the address. And we cut to this brief scene of Harley and Catwoman, which I really love.
I had a kitty once. You know, they don't always land on their feet. Look on the bright side. Tomorrow you'll be feeding hundreds of hungry cats. The fun starts as soon as Mr. J comes back.
Don't wait up.
Back off, bats, or say ciao to your girlfriend. Cat chow, that is.
Cat
That's a good little rodent. And just to make sure you don't follow me,
For as horny as he was on the commentary, he didn't have anything to say about tied up Catwoman here.
Did he have to leave the room? Is that why?
he was using all of his energy just to suppress his like keep hands above waist.
Poor Bruce.
Sorry.
It's a very, it's two of the sexiest characters in the context of the show.
Yeah, and again, I mean, like this, it is a long-held tradition of comic book artists on Batman to draw women tied up and get it for more reasons than just the plot purposes of a damsel in distress. So they're just falling into the approved tropes. I do like that bit where she's like, you're going to be feeding 100 cats tomorrow. It's like, damn.
Yeah, they're going to grind her up.
And same with, I actually like when Joker does his like, he says like, gee, I'm going to deliver the cat food to Batman tomorrow. Ha ha ha. Like, the animation on his ha ha is so great. But then the reaction shot of the other rogues are like, dude, you went too far.
Yeah.
You're going to cut her up into cat food?
Well, he went Joker mode on them.
Yeah, and Harley very much is being the she thinks she knows the tropes just like the people who are like, oh, we got to take away Batman's utility belt. She thinks Batman always chooses to save a victim over chasing the bad guy. I'll get away because I'm leaving him to save Catwoman. And so when Batman chases after her instead, she's like, hey, you're not following the script. You're supposed to save Catwoman and I get away.
Luckily, there's a power switch nearby.
Yes, that's this whole exchange here is very cute, I think.
gee, Batman, what you gonna do? Kick me around and save your kitten? You've only got time for one. Good call. Help!
So on the commentary, that last sound there, she says after help, it's like help, whoosh, foomp. They're like, he hit her. Like they say like that's how they got away with Batman hitting her off screen.
I didn't realize that, yeah.
I mean, you could also see it as him like throwing her on her back and then tying her
like
up.
Like knocking her over. Yeah.
Yeah. But
things they can't show you.
They still were getting away. On the commentary, they're like, we got away with another one there. Like they reveal on the commentaries a secret plot they had, which was to submit scripts that are front-loaded with things they knew Fox would never approve.
The oldest trick in the book.
So then the things they really thought Fox wouldn't approve, but they could get away with, seem less bad. And I thank them for that because it made for better cartoon shows. But yes, Batman has saved the day. Catwoman is free. And then we get one more tale of trying to get Batman.
Thanks for coming after me.
I owed you.
Well, I'd like to think our relationship isn't just restricted to saving each other from freaks and weirdos, and that maybe we'd have a place for each other without Gotham, without the freaks, maybe without masks.
Maybe.
Almost got him.
She said the name of the show.
She said it.
No, that's great. I forgot about all the little clever touches, but yeah, her Batman story is the last. It's like a surprise, like, oh, that's her story of Batman getting away.
She's also technically a villain, so it's her story of almost getting Batman.
So good, so good.
And I mean, there are real good sexy touches, the way she like circles his emblem on his chest too.
Yeah. Again, like I like this one, superficially, like, oh, it's a bunch of fun villain stories. Then you realize just how much is going on under the surface of what could have been a lazy collection of fun villain stories that would have still been good.
And the way they write Catwoman here, putting the moves on Batman, it also really reminds me of the Adam West show of like where the classic one where Lee Merriweather is like, just run away with me. We can just have kids together and be happy. Like the constantly pitching to Batman that they should stop being adversaries. In the 66 one, when she does that, there's a funny line where Batman says, "What about Robin?" She's like, "We'll kill him." And
I didn't see that one.
But that's where I think they're pulling from the same place. And Catwoman, though, here, like, played great by Adrienne Barbeau. And, like, they bring up on the commentary, Batman's flowing cape there looks really, really great. Mm-hmm. Though Bruce Timm is like, his nose is a little too droopy in this one, though. Batman's cowl nose droops a little more.
I guess I did notice that,
yeah.
But it's a great shot of the just the Gotham skyline almost.
And to finish the commentary with one last horny note. They say, like, well, you didn't like that mask on Batman, but this next shot of Catwoman you like, right? And the shot of her looking down when she says, "Almost got him," he's like, now that's a woman. They really, it's a voluptuous lady. Like, it's not just him, though. It's Radomski and Dini. They all go like, yeah.
Hear him licking their lips.
I mean, she is very, like, she's
a very sexual character, yeah.
Yes, and also, like, shadowed heavily, too, to emphasize certain parts of her. Mm-hmm. Plus, her outfit is just painted on clothes.
Very form-fitting, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to mention one last horny moment from the commentary.
So many horny moments.
But what a great, incredible script full of just clever nuance that is so, you watch it like 3 or 4 times, you keep catching things. Great acting by the incredible cast showing off, and just the animation delivers on it too. It's just perfect. A perfect episode of the show.
It's fun to see how Batman, the animated series, was a sandbox for all these fun crime stories. And the last one we did is just like the most pathos-filled, heart-wrenching episode. This one is just like a fun collection of stories, but again, there's more going on. It's a very clever way of telling a bunch of little stories. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this show could do everything. And hopefully we'll talk more about it in the future.
Yeah. In some form or another. And definitely we need to do, I'd love to do Superman and Batman Beyond as well. Mm-hmm. Like, so many to do. But yeah, maybe it's our next miniseries. Who knows? It's going to be the Batman fans versus the King of the Hill fans next, I predict. But guess we shall see.
We will see. But yes, thanks for listening to this episode of What a Cartoon. If you want to support our show and our network and get every episode 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And when you sign up, you'll get just that and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes access to all of our limited miniseries. Our most recent one was Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1, and that was 10 new episodes of Talking Futurama. And who knows, we might do Batman at some point in the future, but whatever the case, you'll get access to all of those miniseries and the 100-plus paywalled podcasts we've done so far on the Patreon if you sign up for $5 at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And Henry, what is happening at the $10 level? extra long podcasts, and there's one extra long one about Batman the Animated Series.
That is correct. That is our monthly podcast, What a Cartoon Movie, only for our $10 and up Patreon supporters, where they get to hear me and Bob talk for up to 4 hours about a different animated feature film. That's our a lengthy preview of that will be our fourth podcast in the What a Cartoon feed this month, and that one is going to be for the Animatrix, the anime compilation film. You know, they did a Batman one of those too around when The Dark Knight came out.
You're right, yeah.
But the Animatrix, we're going to be doing that one, talking about the Matrix film. Plus, last month we did the Iron Giant, and if you sign up, you get to hear the entire back catalog, which includes the previously mentioned Batman Mask of the Phantasm film and the Tiny Toons How I Spent My Vacation, if you want more background on Paul Dini's work as well, and the creation of the Warner Animation franchise. All of that's there for you at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts, a classic gaming podcast. Check it out at retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine and you should be able to find it. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. It's where I tweet out all of my comic book nerdy thoughts, and also whenever new podcasts go live on either What a Cartoon or Talking Simpsons. Plus, you should be following the official Twitter account of this podcast network at Talk Simpsons Pod to stay in the loop. So please follow it there at HENEREYG and at Talk Simpsons Pod.
Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for the Bucky O'Hare episode, Home Swampy Home, and we'll see you then.
Now to take a poison antidote from your miraculous belt. And I suggest you do it quickly, before my cassowary's razor-sharp talons rend you asunder.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.